Welcome to the podcast today. Outside our walls, we do this podcast because we want to make sure that we have voices outside of our walls at Anchor to help us think and get perspectives and wisdom. And today is no different. Today I have Ronnie Martin with me. Ronnie is a pastor in Ohio, Ashland, correct? Ashland, Ohio, is that right? Is that outside Columbus? Is that where that is? Is it close to Columbus?
Yeah, it's we're like a halfway point right in between Columbus and Cleveland. Yeah.
Okay.
45 minutes right in the middle.
So. Okay. So actually that's not super far from where I grew up outside of Detroit. You're not that far away from
a couple hours. Yeah.
My stomping grounds. So you're pastor in Ohio, Substance Church, part of Sojourner, and you're a part of the Evangelical Free Church, kind of that whole group. You went to Trinity, right? You spent some time at Trinity?
Yeah, I graduated from Trinity. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Was that with your bachelor's? Was that with your MDiv? Would you graduate?
It was actually an MA. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So like you're fresh out of Trinity.
Yeah, that was a couple years ago. So
a couple years ago.
Pretty recent. Yeah, fairly recent.
Fairly recent. Well, I appreciate you joining me, man. Thanks for jumping on. Sure. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? To just let us get to know you a little bit before I jump into some questions. Just love to hear some more about you.
Yeah. So, gosh, I'm married. Been married for 25 years. Have a 24-year-old daughter who lives and works in Denver. So we relocated to Ohio about 10 years ago. We were basically Southern California natives, and we relocated from the West Coast almost to the day 10 years ago. Last week it was 10 years to the day, and started this work. And it's sort of a mid-sized town. Ashland is not a tiny town. And the reason why I say that is when I talk to small town church plants and I tell them, well, I'm in this tiny town, I tell them it's like 30,000, they start laughing, especially if they're in a town of 400, right? And so we try to out small town each other. And I'm like, okay, I get it. I'm not in this tiny town, but it's a university town that also has a seminary attached to it, and a lot of history to it. And so we transitioned, and it's been just a heck of a journey, ever since that time. So the culture was completely different for us. In a lot of ways, we're still learning a lot of things, still acclimating in a lot of ways. And God has just, he's just done a lot of good work here through the church and then in us through it, again, a lot of humbling experiences. And I'm sure we're going to talk through some of that stuff, but that's a snapshot for you.
Yeah, that's good. And I know that as I look at pictures from Substance, and it looks like it's an old, brick town, like small. Is it one of those towns that you drive through in Ohio and it's like, old brick, old coal mine town? It seems like that. It seems like a quaint, awesome little town in middle America. Is that right?
Yeah, it is technically speaking. Yeah, it again, everything that you would think of, the old buildings and all the old brick buildings. And so we got this old furniture warehouse that's in the downtown. It's all brick, and there's a lot of charm to it, and very aesthetically pleasing. And and a lot you can do with it, on a creative level, because it's just kind of a wide open space. And so we've enjoyed that aspect of it. And the town actually is. It's one of these towns, it's called a comeback town. So there's all this revitalization that's going on right now. And you got new businesses finally moving in after years of it being a little bit in disrepair. And so there's new restaurants coming in, and it's starting to really thrive again. And it's fun being a part of that. So to get to have a church and a building that we actually just purchased this year to be in the middle of all that revitalization, it's been a privilege, to have that kind of presence, and to actually be able to partner with them and let them know that we want to be friends, and we're happy to be helping with that revitalization work. It's been really cool. So.
That's cool, man. That's awesome. You came to Ohio from a totally different, you hinted at this earlier, totally different scene, really. You were in the Tooth and Nail Records vibe early on. You and your brother, we share a friend, right? So Trey Manny. I've been friends with Trey since he was in high school. He's a little older than me. Sorry, you're like a lot older than me, I think. You just turned 50.
I'm a lot
Is that
older than
right?
everybody now. Yes. So the oldest
I'm
person
40.
in the world.
I'm 43. I think Trey might be a little younger than you, but you guys were all in that tooth and nail Velour 100. You were Joy Electric. You were Joy Electric back in the day, and your
Yeah.
brother's Starflyer 59. Like there's this vibe of, old music. But my growing up days with tooth and nail in the 90s. You went from that into being a professional musician, essentially in Joy Electric, to then being a pastor. And I just know that there's, I'm sure there was a journey there. I'm sure the Lord was working in you in those seasons, probably even as you're doing music, trying to think through that stuff. I know that as we think about our own lives and as we're trying to think through just what God's moving in us, all of us in some ways are going to have those moments of, what does the Lord want me to do? For me, trying to plant a church, what should I do this? Is this a good idea? How do I think that? I'm sure it's the same for you. Just give us some thoughts on that, man. Like, what did the Lord do in you? How did you go from being a professional musician to wanting to be a pastor and getting from Los Angeles to Ohio? Like, give us some thoughts on that.
Yeah, gosh, it's, one of the things I always find amazing when I talk to anybody that's, that's in ministry, that's doing pastoral ministry, is that there's never one path that's the same. And I feel like that's the uniqueness of God. It's the creativity of God, that in the way that he kind of weaves his story in our stories and then brings us into this crazy thing called ministry that we're doing. And it was the same for me. So really my journey was just in terms of, coming into, leading worship and, so pretty with in some ways, but I did come into it kind of kicking and screaming. I really enjoyed what I did on with Joy Electric and, being with Tooth and Nail. And so, but there was something that God was doing in my head, my heart theologically, being, coming into an understanding of what Reformed theology was. I remember my brother, handing me an R.C. Sproul book, because this was stuff that was really starting to, stir inside of him. And then really coming under some pastors at a really solid church that we finally found ourselves in Corona, California. And just finally, really for the first time in my life, being in this music scene and traveling so much and doing all these things, I finally had a couple of pastors, a couple of brothers that really invested in me. And that it had a massive impact on me, because they didn't care. They knew who I was from the music thing. And yet they didn't let that sort of put them off and shy away from me, because that had happened before. And they just said, hey, we appreciate what you're doing. And we know you're only here one Sunday a month because you're on the road, or 2 Sundays a month. But man, we'd love to get coffee with you. We'd love to just, kind of find out where you're at and see what God's doing in your life. And God used them to kind of wake me up. And it was during that time, during all of this transition, that I think God just sparked something in me. He made me see my life as being something that was really a little more nominal than I would have thought it was in terms of my relationship with Christ. And these guys really cared enough about me to point that out. And they were very honest with me. And that was refreshing for me at that time. And I think, to make a long story short, those connect points led me to eventually, being on staff at this particular church and sort of, leading the music ministry there. But then the whole time, God was just constantly, I think, just sort of drawing me away from the music industry and into ministry. And at some point in the mid 2000s, my dad passed away suddenly. And that just that was a catalyst for a lot of the work that God had been doing in my life. And he just used that really to sort of, I think, frame everything that was going on, show me some of the futility of the things that I kept pursuing that were not bearing much fruit in my life. And that really just woke me up in some ways, even though he was already waking me, and that was a bit of a jolt. And again, yeah, so from that point on, it was really just me, becoming a little more submerged in ministry and just learning about how this world works. And it's almost like going backstage and kind of seeing, sort of the inner workings of how all this stuff just comes together. And again, it was it was simultaneously, eye-opening and horrendous in some ways, right? Wait,
Yeah.
pastors, they talk that way, they say these things, they think these things, and it was really good for me, and it really helped me understand that these are men of God, but these are also men, and to see their weaknesses and to be able to
Mm.
grow with that, from that point on, I think did a lot more good than harm,
Hmm.
and God really used it in me. I feel like I'm probably rambling now, but
No, that's good. I mean, what's one of the things you just said was, I think that we can. It's interesting going and exploring pastoral ministry, discipleship. We can sometimes have this view that once we hit a certain level of discipleship or pastoral ministry or leadership, we've arrived, and like it's almost like you transcend into a different holiness level. But one of the things you just said is, I think, is so key. Like as we deal with leaders, and as we're like walking this through, I think about this in my own life with growing up, and even myself. You go, man, a pastor is just a guy. Like we try and talk about that a lot of time at our church. We're like, pastors are sheep before they're shepherds. Like we're just people trying to figure it out. And I think sometimes when you see that, it actually sparks something that can either turn you off from people, or you can say, oh, okay, so that person's just a person, like, and we can deal with that. And then it sounded like
good.
for you that was an eye opener where you went, oh, okay, like I see there's warts here, like there's issues here, but that's something that God's going to maybe using me to actually spur me on, that maybe even something like, I can do this, like if okay,
Yeah,
like I don't have to be perfect, that's good.
right.
Like because I'm not, or whatever. Is that, I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it was seeing, and so growing up in Southern California culture, I mean, it's a very casual church culture. So again, you're seeing dudes standing in oversized Hawaiian shirts preaching every week. That's the culture, that's the vibe, right? So, but I think, yeah, I think seeing the humanity of these men, really stuck out to me, and just some of the humility that they brought to the table. And then I think besides that, it was the encouragement that I received from them. Even though I had, I still do, but in the early days, there's so many areas of growth that's necessary. And at the same time, I wasn't super young, so I had some experience in some other areas. But seeing their humility, again, it allowed me to see that this is something that's not going to work if it's being approached with any level of "I got this" or arrogance or "I can't be told." And again, that's a story common to a lot of guys that come into ministry, maybe fresh out of seminary. They're really young, in their 20s. And God put me with more seasoned men in the beginning of my, sort of my ministry startup. And that was really helpful for me, because again, I think it accelerated some things, and you can't accelerate growth, but I think it gave me a particular kind of wisdom from men that had already grown so much. And that was
Yeah.
massively helpful for
Yeah.
me, I think, in the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, it's interesting because I think you and I had talked. We were just talking about this. It was probably
Mhm.
close to 10 years ago. I
Sure.
don't know exactly when, but I think I had met you once before. You're not going to remember this at all, but you were in Joy Electric. I think it was maybe 98, like somewhere around there. You had gone on, I don't know if you had gone on a tour with them or whatever, but you were playing with Pedro the Lion
Hmm.
and Velour 100. I think it was
I
an
remember.
East Coast swing. And
Hmm.
so from that, it's funny, like from that, 10 years later, meeting you in Maryland at a worship thing and being like, hey, wait a second, like, how did you go from, it's interesting hearing you talk about it because, from the interactions I've had with you, it's essentially like different epochs in your life.
Hmm.
And you wouldn't know that, but I mean, it's cool to watch God do that. And then when you started Substance, I thought, this is cool, man. Like, this is cool to watch a trajectory from a distance of God doing a work in somebody that I listened to your music. And I was like, this is awesome that you're a pastor. Cause sometimes you think about you Christian musicians and you go, are they Christians? I mean, especially with Tooth and Nail, you just never knew. You're like, are these guys really Christians? Are they, I know it's a Christian label, but is it a Christian label? Like, it was so ambiguous that as a 20-year-old, 19-year-old, I'm like, I don't know. I like people's music, and it's like the Christian, the quote unquote Christian scene. And it's cool to see, like, here you are a pastor and you're like, this is just awesome that God's done a work like that in you. I'm sure that through those seasons, there were a lot of times where you were just unsure. Like, I don't know what God's doing. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. God, give me something. Like, help me. So, what would you say to people that are maybe even dealing with that now? Like, people that are listening to this going, man, I feel like God might be calling me to something. I don't know what that is. I don't know how to think through that. I don't know what steps to take. How would you help people that are thinking through some of those big decisions right now and trying to understand it all?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll tell you the pattern that God has seemed to use in my life for that. And I don't know that this can apply broadly, but what has seemed to happen in my life is that it usually starts with some particular desire or thought. Like, I wonder if God is calling me to this particular place or to this particular role or position. There's something in me now that there's a heart beating for something that yesterday it wasn't beating for that thing. Or maybe it's something that started slowly, and before you know it, you wake up one day and you go, I want to do that. I think God has given me a desire and maybe just an inkling of a gifting to do that. And maybe it's something he'll grow and continue to establish me. So that's always the first thing that happens to me, is that there has to be a desire. And I think when I've been able to locate that desire, and I still do this today. I just begin to pray, and I just pray very honestly. And I say, Lord, there's a reason why I'm feeling drawn to this particular thing. And maybe it's just an ego thing. Maybe the motivations are off. Maybe I'm looking for some personal gain or money, or who knows, notoriety. I don't know. It can be all those things. Or is it just something that you're starting to spark in me because it's an indicator of a future path that you have for me? So, man, I just start praying about it. And then I start just looking for, open doors. I think one of the mistakes I made early on, especially in my music career, was, there's that pressure in the music industry where you don't just wait for doors to open, man. You're knocking them down. You're trying to push through them, and you're getting anybody you can to, hey, can you open that door for me? And whether it opens naturally or not, you're just, everybody, it's like a bull in a china shop mentality where everybody is just pushing themselves in all these spaces because, again, they're trying to, they're trying to further what it is they're doing. And it just, I don't really believe it works well that way in ministry. And so one of the things I've learned is start praying about it, locate the desire, start praying about if it's something from the Lord, and then just start looking around to see, man, are there other people affirming this? Are there any doors opening? And there might not be. And that's where patience comes in, and trusting that God, if he continues with that desire, then it's likely that a door is going to open. So I always pray for open or closed doors. And so I'll give you an example of that. I won't go into specifics, but I had been praying about something for about 3 or 4 years. It was a particular role with our denomination, with the Free Church. And there was a lot of things in place that looked like I was going to be able to move into this particular role. And I prayed because I was feeling drawn to it on one hand, and then I was not so certain on another hand. So I just said, Lord, would you open and close the door? Would you make this clear? Because I'm not sure. And then right to the last minute, he slammed the door. So, he didn't just sort of just shut it. He slammed it. He put the triple lock on it. There was no question that this was not what he had for me. But it was probably 3 to 4 years of wondering and prayer. And in fact, the door was closed so resolutely that it opened up some other doors in some areas I wasn't thinking about. It also caused me to have to sort of shift my thinking, because I really thought this was a direction that I was going to be going in. Yeah. And so it was like even thinking and planning and thinking of the future. It shifted all of those things, but God spoke. That was one of the clearest no's from God that I've ever gotten. And it was even audible. It just didn't come from the mouth of God. It was from other people.
Yeah.
So, so I don't know, that's been just sort of the pattern and the steps that I take, and I'm still taking right now, even when you get a feeling or a desire about something. But
That's good. I mean, one of the things you just said is I think is profound. Sometimes God speaks not from his mouth, but from his body, right? So even like as you interact with the people around you in your church or in other leadership positions in the denomination, just brothers and sisters in the Lord, sometimes God can use some of those conversations to bring a lot of clarity, which is the danger sometimes, because we think I'm just going to make this decision on my own, which is such a mistake. I mean, it's a
right.
mistake for us, but biblically, even like
Yes,
wisdom in the counsel of many, like let's do that. Let's get wisdom. We can just become isolated, and it's not wise.
totally.
So that's cool.
Yeah, that's
That's
a good
cool that God
point.
does that. I love that God's at work, right? It just actually, it also gives us a sense that, oh, God's on the move. Like if he's going to speak to me that clearly, all right,
Yeah.
like that's good to know. I mean, God
Yeah,
knows what I'm
yeah,
doing.
totally. And I think how he's helped me over the years in terms of loving more what he loves, hating more of what he hates. I think part of that equation is that I was remarkably okay when I got the no. And I don't say that I don't say that to sound to sound arrogant, as much as just to say I was surprised that God had prepared me as much as he did for the no, even though it looked like a capital YES from all
Mm,
these different things. The no was shocking, but again, I prayed so specifically, and I think that's another thing, is praying specifically. I've learned that. Pray specifically.
yeah.
It's not that God doesn't know what we're talking about if we don't pray specifically, but pray specifically. And he gave me a very specific answer in that. And I was remarkably, it was shocking for about a minute. And I went, okay, that's all I needed to know.
Yeah.
You have clearly spoken. And I appreciate that, because I don't want to be in a place that you don't want me to be,
Yeah,
and
that's good.
we make bad decisions sometimes, and he uses that, and he brings us back to the middle and where he has for us too. We can always trust him for that. But it was a really refreshing, it was a very refreshing, very illuminating, very sanctifying thing for me to go through. And it's helping me now as I'm praying about things for the future,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's good, man. Well, that as you talked about that going from music to where you are now, one of the changes for sure that
Mm,
you've probably had to get used to is going from a big city. And I know
mm.
that Ashland sounds like to some it's not a small city.
It's still
Um,
small.
it's still small relatively to Southern California. Um,
Yeah.
what are some of the joy? So we say we want to make sure that we want to plant churches. We're part of Acts 29. I want to get into Sojourner here in a second too. But we want to be a church that plants churches. We've been affected a lot by J.D. Greer's book, Gaining by Losing, just feeling like,
Oh yeah.
man, there is a
Good book.
lot to benefit from. So you went from Southern California to middle of Ohio, totally different culture. Like I'm not sure you could get much different culturally from those two spots, from weather to people to laid backness to everything, right?
Yeah.
Give me just a couple that come to your mind, some of the joys of that and some of the difficulties of you making that transition. What have you found out to be like, these are the great things that we just love about going from big city to small, planting a church here, being with people. I'm sure people is one
Yeah.
of them because you're with this church. But then some of the difficulties, how was that difficult as well, making that transition from big city to small town?
Yeah, gosh, I appreciate that question. Some of the joys have been, so I was in Southern California for 40 years, and just some of the basics, right? The traffic, no weather. You're experiencing that. I
Yep,
think just some
totally.
stuff that I had just grown just weary of, having been born and raised there. I was very, very happy to get away from that. And just to get into something that is a little more slow, and it's people are not in a hurry, and so there's a it lacks a franticness that I had just grown up with, where everything. So here's something that's interesting, because the sun shines every day of the year in Southern California. Nobody has any sort of like, the weather doesn't slow anybody down, except for when it rains and everybody calls off work because they act like it's, that's the end of the world. But there's just the seasons create these natural rhythms here where, we have these weeks of snow and everybody just kind of tucks in. And it's a known thing that, hey, we're going to stay connected, but it's also okay to, to go into a time of just, being home, relaxing with your family, and letting that particular rhythm of rest kind of be incorporated into your life, because the weather's kind of making it so we can't get a lot of things done with all the snow. So there's natural things like that I've just come to really enjoy. And then understanding how people have grown up with it and live with it and work their way through it has been just a learning thing for us. But it's been good because we can stand back and go, hey, what do we do here? This hasn't been our experience. And so it's been good in terms of that. I think some of the difficulties, like any culture, is that, we came in a little too green for sure. We were looking at this whole transition through, I think, ministry eyes only, which was, hey, in the end, right, people are people. We're dealing with sin issues. We're dealing with the human heart, and the human heart is pretty universal. And it's like all of that was true. What we didn't realize is that people get to those places differently. So I think the two big things that were surprising to us was, Southern California is, it's a recreation culture. Yeah. So, and everybody's goal on Monday morning is to get to Friday afternoon so that they can get out of Dodge.
Go surfing, go somewhere, go up to the mountains.
100%. Yeah. Go to Vegas, go surfing. We're going to get in the boat. We're going to go to Disneyland because everything's close. And so everybody, the culture there is we spend a lot of money. We spend it as fast as we make it. And so we accumulate things, which is part of what we put our money into. But that's how we find our security, is by spending money, accumulating things, and just making sure that we can, get out of Dodge whenever we can, And so I grew up with that, just surrounded by that culture. Here, it's the opposite. And so people find their security in, hey, I haven't taken a vacation in 7 years. I haven't taken a day off in 8 months. Besides my main job, I also work a farm and 2 other jobs, and I also sell products on eBay. And you're just like, your mind is just blown, right? Yeah. And you're like, well, do you ever take a day off? Have you heard of this thing called Sabbathing? And it's like, they have,
No.
It's and it's some of it is influenced by sort of the generations of farm culture, that emerged through the years. And so I think in the beginning that was really hard for us, because there's a heavy frugality. We save our money. That's where we find our security. Well, in Southern California, you spend your money for security because you buy things and you'll sell those things if you need money. So it's just they both end up in the same place, which is false security.
Yes.
They just get there differently, and it just took us so many years to finally sort of get our head wrapped around that. And once we finally did, it helped us in a lot of other ways, because it helped us understand where the people come from and what it is that they're dealing with, and the pain, where we can locate those pain points based on those things. It just took time, and that was I probably said a lot of ridiculous things, and I'm sure I put my foot in my mouth 1,000 times, and God obviously uses all that. Thankfully, we still have people that love us, even though I'm sure we've offended them. Yeah. And we are still, for some people we'll always be the Californians, which, by the way, in this area is not a fantastic thing, right?
Yeah, totally.
That's not looked upon with a lot of affection. But again, we've gained their trust, and we consider ourselves Ohioans now. And in fact, we're having a better time in Ohio than I think we ever had in California anyway. I'm justifying myself now, right? But
no, that's good.
A couple things, but yeah.
Well, this would be a time with other people that I'd make a University of Michigan Ohio State joke, but you have zero affection for sports, so it doesn't really translate, right? Like there's no translation.
I know all the stuff. I know that I'm supposed to hate Michigan,
Yeah,
but I've never watched one game between Ohio State and Michigan. So I meet guys. It's funny when I meet guys from Michigan and they're all treading all lightly around me, like, so I'm a Michigan fan. I go, a Michigan fan of what? I'm like, I'm talking to the wrong guy, man.
You're like, I like
I have
Michigan, and it's
no, yeah,
state.
exactly. Like
The state's great. Like, it's awesome up there.
I love big fan of Ann Arbor, big fan of Detroit. Absolutely.
Oh man, Ann Arbor's such a great town. Actually, I was just talking. I have a good friend. Do you know Tyler St. Clair? He's EV free. He's up in
Yes,
Detroit.
I know Tyler. Yes,
Yeah.
I just did a workshop with him in last fall. Hung out with him for about
awesome.
4 days.
Yeah,
I love Tyler.
He's such a good dude. He was on here maybe like 5 or 6 weeks ago.
Oh, that's sweet.
You guys are both EV free guys, which is cool.
That's sweet.
He's
awesome.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know why I got sidetracked on that. Michigan, I think it was Michigan, Ohio. I would love to hear about your just about your partnerships with Sojourn and your denomination. I know that it's different. Like we are a one thing actually. Let me go back. I was going to say this. Phoenix is weird because Phoenix is a strange combo of what you were talking about, Midwest and California, like always sunny, but when it's 110, everybody tucks in. Like our summers are the slow times. So like as you were talking, I was like, wow, it's just opposite. Like it's an opposite, but we still have that culture of, people are going out, people are spending, people are, that's that kind of Southern California culture is here. And it's weird, you preach the gospel's the same, but the contextualization of it can be a little different based upon where you are. So probably your applications are going to be different where you are as opposed to Southern California based upon people's bents or people's thoughts or how people live or people working too much as opposed to being relaxing too much or whatever, like those things. It's just interesting. Like different parts of the country are so different in that. So anyway, I want to hear about Sojourn and EV free. Like, give me what are some benefits? We're Acts 29, and we love it. What are some benefits that you're finding? I love Sojourn. I've met Mike Cosper. I was on a, he probably wouldn't remember me at all, but I was on a songwriting panel with him, maybe 5 years ago, and got a chance to chat with him for a bit. Like, a great dude. I just appreciate Sojourn. What are some benefits you found with Sojourn and the Evangelical Free Church?
Yeah, they're really two different things for me. We planted with E-Free. They were really interested in planting a church in Ashland, and I had come from an E-Free church, so I was on staff at a free church in SoCal. That's where I came from when I came here. So I wouldn't say roots because I didn't really have a lot of connection with the free church in general, even though I was on staff at a free church. But when I came here, I met up with the district superintendent who lived a little bit outside of our town. And he said, man, we've been praying about an Ashland free church plant for 10 years. He goes, so the fact that you're talking about this gets me really excited. And this guy ends up just planting the church with us. He's actually been one of our elders now for years. Great guy. So God really put that together. So that was kind of how we came into the free church. I'm somebody who I like denominations. I like, denominations are, they represent pillars of people who, know what they believe. And I like the anchor of a denomination, I like something there that has proven itself to be, doctrinally sound. And to me, it represents a measure of credibility. Not that you can't have that if you don't have a denomination, but for me, I like that. And I like that about the free church. So that was something that was important to me. And I think those are some of the things that I'm able to derive from that. I think for our people, especially in a more traditional culture, a denomination is still something that I think matters in this kind of a more traditional culture than it probably would on the West Coast and even where you're at, So that gives you sort of a level of credibility with people that you're with a reputable, group of churches and leaders. So I've really appreciated that. I love their, they do a biannual conference. I love some of the people that are associated with the Free Church, like D.A. Carson. And so there's some theological kind of muscle there that I really appreciate. I'm also on their church planning national board. So I've served on that now for about 4 years. So that's been a privilege as well, to be with them a little more on a national level. That's been fun. Just met some great guys through that. And then just kind of their link with, the Free Church has kind of that link with the Gospel Coalition because of Carson and, all those things. So I like that whole theological vibe that we have with the E-Free. I think with Sojourn, they're a little bit different in that it's just a church planning network, which means we do have things that we believe, just like Acts 29. In fact, Sojourn is just the snobby version of Acts 29 at the end of the day, right? But there's a lot of similarities though, right? And so what Sojourn was for me was after planting Substance, I knew so many. It was very small when we went with them. I think we were the 20th church, that jumped into the network. So we were one of the earlier churches that dove in, but I'd already had so many friends that happened to be Sojourn pastors, right? So, I knew Mike Hosper and a guy named Nick Nye and a guy named Michael Crawford. So these people that were already friends that were part of the network, it was just a natural thing for me to get into the network. And really, the network is probably where I find I have my greatest friendships and camaraderie. And I think I think it's the most natural fit in terms of when we get together for retreats or conferences, man, there's a level of understanding and togetherness and mission there that is just undeniable. And it makes it something that is enjoyable. It's easy to be around. When you look at a denomination, you can have, we have this doctrinal statement that really, binds us together, but, methodologically and all these other things in terms of ecclesiology, it can be all over the map, with the Free Church. Whereas when you come into a network, it narrows those things down to where it's, we actually get to expand our horizons in the things that we talk about. Because, for example, we're all square on our doctrine, right? We're not,
right.
we're not kind of going into these little tangents or these little rabbit trails, because we're kind of all in the same place. And so we do get to talk more about methodology and culture and things that really can help one another out on that level. And so that's why Sojourn has been so good for me. These are the brothers that really walk through life with me, for sure. And it's had a massive impact on me personally as a pastor. So it's been a great thing. Yeah.
All right. That's good, man. Yeah. I think partnership like that's so key, right? It's just an important part of church life, even pastor life, like just finding those connections.
Yeah, for sure.
Finding brotherhoods. It actually cares for the church. The church may not know that, but the church, I think, feels it. They probably don't know where that comes from. And that's the case for us. Like you feel the connection through the pastors and just even own pastoral health, because I do have people outside that are pushing me or asking me questions. It's good.
Yeah. Good. Well said.
All right. So let's get to this. I just got a couple other things here I want to chat with you about. You wrote a book, just came out this past year. Tell me about the book. Tell us about the book.
Yeah, well, man, we talked a little bit off the air about this. I love Christmas more than really anything besides my family and Jesus. So that's in my top 3, and I've always wanted to write, an Advent book, and I had an idea while I was on sabbatical a couple of years ago, and I had an idea to write an Advent book for kids. And I have this illustrator, somebody that I worked with back in the music days that did some, album sleeves for me, but he's also like an illustrator. And so I connected with him and I said, hey, I have this idea. I said, would you be interested? He said he would. And so we just kind of put together something and, got a publisher interested in. So yeah, it came out in October. It's called The Best Gift Ever Given. It's just a 25-day Advent book for kids, gospel centered, leading them through really just Genesis all the way to the birth of Christ, and talking about
That's great.
all the gifts that God gives us, but it's not the best gift. And then we get to Jesus.
That's
And
good.
so, yeah, it was really fun. That, man, the illustrations just turned out fantastic, which I, of course, had nothing to do with it, which is why I can say that. And so it's a very, very satisfying kind of creative project. And again, writing for kids, which was something I had to learn how to do, which is,
Yeah,
it's a thing in and of itself that I'd never done before. So it was really fun.
that's good. And everybody can get that on Amazon, right? Is that the best place to get it? Would be Amazon?
Amazon's probably the best place. Yeah.
Okay.
It'll go
Cool,
on
man.
sale again probably this October, Yeah.
Okay. Awesome, dude. Well, a couple thoughts. So are you a holiday, like when the fall hits, are you like, man, because this is me. We talked about this. I love Christmas. I grew up loving
Yeah.
Christmas, but I love Christmas starting in September because I'm like, September begins the march towards Christmas, including
September
Halloween,
1. Yeah.
Thanksgiving, you know.
Yeah.
So okay, we're on the same page. So
Absolutely.
if you, all right, let me ask you some questions. All right, here we go. I wrote some questions down for you about Christmas and Thanksgiving and
Okay.
music. All right.
Okay.
If you had to give up in Christmas season, Christmas music, Christmas cookies, or the trees and the lights, which one would you give up out of those three? I'd love to hear
Cookies.
your answer. Cookies for
Cookies.
sure.
Well, the music is what just is part of what like frames the whole season, right? It's what kind of it's what kind of evokes the nostalgia and the memories and the magic for me. So
Yep.
I have the music playing like almost all day. It's on constant. It's constantly spinning. And the trees and the lights, yeah, that's part of it. So we really decorate the house. We love doing that. We do it up. And the cookies, yeah, I'll do something. I'll do other treats. I can sub out the cookies. So
What's your favorite Christmas? Like if you were to say, I want to listen to a Christmas album. What's your
yeah.
go-to? Maybe the first one of the year, you're like, oh, this is going to be it. What is it?
Yeah, it's either going to be Nat King Cole, a Christmas song,
Yes.
or it's going to be Carpenter's Christmas portrait.
Ooh, the Carpenters. I don't think I've listened to the Carpenters Christmas album.
It's absolutely fantastic, and don't think Carpenter's 70s kind of kitschy sound like what they did on their records. This thing is all orchestras. It's beautiful. It's with Karen Carpenter's voice. And they sing all the classics, and it's absolutely an amazing record. So
that's good. Okay.
I probably go to it first. I got a stack. I got a ton of stuff, and but those are two that where I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to introduce my heart to the Christmas season? That's usually what it is.
That's so good. Okay. Yeah, I love, man, Nat King Cole. It's tough to beat Nat King Cole.
Yeah, Chestnuts, the Christmas song, Nat King
man.
Cole, that is Christmas to me right there.
That totally
song, yeah.
I totally agree with you on that, man. That's good. All right. Thanksgiving. Are you a Thanksgiving guy? You love Thanksgiving?
100%. I love it.
Okay.
I love
okay.
It. Yeah.
Best food on Thanksgiving between stuffing, turkey, or pie?
Oh man. I actually am not a stuffing guy. I know that's blasphemy.
Neither am I. No, I'm not either. I hate it.
Oh,
that's
funny.
Yeah.
My wife and I get into an argument. We probably get into like 3 arguments a year. This is one of them because she makes all this stuffing, and we usually don't have these massive Thanksgiving celebrations, and we have like vats of this stuff, and she loves it so much. And I'm like, and she's like, can I just convince you to eat it this year? And I'm like, babe, it's been 25 years. Like, I'll have a bite, but like, it's just not my thing. And so yeah, I don't love the stuffing. I'll go with the. I love the pie, but I'm more of a cake guy than a pie. I'll go with the turkey on this one.
Turkey. All right. All right. What about mashed potatoes? Would you take mashed
potatoes
over turkey?
I would absolutely. No question.
Yeah. That wasn't, I didn't add that because I was like, that's not fair. That's an easy answer for sure. My children hate anything potatoes. So like
really
mashed potatoes, I'm like, I cannot believe you guys don't like, do you know how much butter's in that? It's so good. Like you guys.
Oh man, to me, it's like one of God's greatest creations. It's unbelievable.
I know. Totally. Typically, I won't even have, I won't have anything else except that. I'll have a massive plate of mashed potatoes.
Absolutely.
All right. If you had to give one of these up, Moogs or record players, what would you give up?
I'd give up the record player because there's other ways I can listen to music, but a Moog only does one thing.
You're a Moog guy, right? That's like kind of that's your thing.
Yeah,
right?
I'm kind of a purist. Yeah. That was
Yeah.
the first synth I ever had, and I had plenty of others through the years, but I kind of returned to Moog, 20 years ago, 15 years ago.
And did you a lot of the stuff on Joy Electric, were you playing that through those?
Yeah, so I would say the last 5 records were exclusively, programmed and played on the with Moog stuff, and the earlier stuff was largely like old Roland analog stuff. That was kind of mainly what I was into at that time. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, all right, that's good. So. Tell us where we can hear more from you. Where can people find you online, social media? How can we benefit from you more?
Yeah. Well, you can follow me on Twitter. I should probably know what my handle is. Ronnie. I think it's Ronnie J. Martin.
I'll look it up. I'll look it up while you give us some other.
Okay.
I'll just double check to make sure.
I'm on all the social media platforms if you want to check it out. I also do a podcast called the Happy Rant Podcast with a couple guys named Ted Cluck and Barnabas Piper. And so that comes out once a week. We do one podcast a week, and it's just kind of a satirical commentary on evangelicalism and kind of our tribe, our reformed tribe, and I'm making fun of things, but not taking it seriously, but also saying this is us too. We're making fun of ourselves in the process, and so we just kind of riff on current events and fun stuff. But yeah,
it's good. It's fun to make fun. And we have a mutual friend too, and Stephen Altrogi. I went to. Stephen with you guys in Ohio.
Yeah, he actually moved to Ashland last June, or I'm sorry, July. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Stephen's a good friend, man.
So it's pretty crazy. Yeah.
We went to the Pastor's College together.
Yeah, I would assume. I totally forgot about that. I would have assumed you did. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Tell him I said hi.
Absolutely. I look forward to it.
Instagram is just Ronnie Martin.
Gotcha.
RONNIE Martin. So jump on, and then Substance Church. Just love seeing what you're doing, man. Thanks for pastoring those people. It's fun to be able to watch other pastors and churches do things well. I love your and this doesn't matter at all, but just so you know, I love your branding. Like just the stuff that you guys do is clean. It's just well done. So that kind of stuff inspires me.
Oh, thanks.
Because I feel like as a church plant, it can either be crummy or we can have quality, like the quality level, and we just want to make sure that we're representing the Lord well. Like we're like in the things that how it looks like it matters, and so
that's good. Thank you.
You're an example for me in that. So thanks for doing that. Well, I wanted to just say thanks again for joining us. Grateful for you. Grateful for your time. Looking forward to catching up again at some point soon. So thanks for joining us, man.
All right, bud. Appreciate it.
This has been the Outside Our Walls podcast. Look forward to next week. Drops every Monday.